Hi, my name is Sabrina Montserrat, and today we'll be investigating a multivariate data set of roller coasters using CODAP. If you haven't worked with CODAP before, it's a free web-based data tool, and it's probably my favorite statistical analysis tool available. I'll show you why in a few moments, but first I wanted to talk about what standards this upcoming activity is useful for. If we're referring to Common Core, then this task covers high school statistics and probability, namely interpreting categorical and quantitative data. The most relevant standards for this activity are listed on the slide, but if you're interested in learning more about them, you can go to this link and it'll take you to the Common Core website. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. So as we're looking at our roller coaster data, our task is to investigate and answer these 4 questions. So number 1, are there any differences between the top speed of older, newer, or more recent roller coasters? Number 2, does the type of material make a difference in speed? Number 3, if you were going to ride a coaster that was built before 1980, what would you expect for a typical top speed? And what if you were riding a newer roller coaster? And for number 4, we're going to go to this roller coaster database website and research this quote Xtreme coaster and see how it fits into the analysis that we just did with the previous 3 questions. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our first data set. So this is the data set that was given to me by my professor, but I went ahead and took it a step further and duplicated it and made some aesthetic changes. So I added these 4 text boxes by clicking this text box button. All I did was click it and just change the title and then add the questions. And I just made the column widths easier to view the variable names. Now the data itself is exactly the same. I didn't make any changes that way, but I thought it would be easier to have these text boxes to keep track of what question we're on. So let's go ahead and look at this first question. So are there any differences between the top speed of older, newer, or more recent roller coasters? Well, if we're looking for keywords in this question, one keyword is top speed. So let me drag this graph over here. Let me make it a little bigger, actually, so it's easier to view. And let's see if there's a top speed variable. And there is, it's right here. I'm going to go ahead and drag it. So it's going to create a dot plot. CODAP automatically does that for you. You don't have to do it yourself, thank goodness. And you can also make the point sizes bigger, and you can change the color if you want to. The second variable we want to look at is whether it's older, newer, or more recent roller coasters. Now, if we look at our data set, there isn't a variable on this right side that says that, but if we look to the left side, there is an age group variable. Now, there are 2 tables because what this leftmost table is telling us is that all of the data on the right side is organized by age group. So roller coasters on this right side can be classified as either older, recent, or newest. It's set up as a hierarchy. And you can look at, if you click the variable name itself, if you click the variable name, you can edit attribute properties, and it can tell you whether or not it's considered older, recent, or newest. So a coaster is considered older if it was built between 1900 and 1979, recent if it was built between 1980 and 1999, or newest if it was built between 2000 and today. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and drag age group to this left side, or to the y-axis rather. So when I do, rather than creating a scatter plot, CODAP automatically generates 3 different dot plots that are stacked on one another. Since age group is categorical, this is why they're separated. So this is the newest one, this is recent, and this is older. Now if we look at it, we do notice that the spread of the points is different for each one. And what's great about CODAP is that it'll automatically calculate pertinent information such as mean, median, standard deviation. It can even create a box plot if you wanted to. But for this question, we're going to want to look at the mean. So the question asks, are there any differences between the top speeds of older, newer, or more recent coasters? From what I can tell, yes, there certainly is. There's a lot more variation with the newest coasters. But if we're talking about means, the mean top speed of older coasters is about 49.4. For recent, it's about 58. And for newest coasters, it's about 66. And what that tells us is that the differences between top speed does change, and the mean top speeds, or the typical top speeds rather, do increase over time. And I would say that would answer our first question. So let me minimize that, and let's go ahead and look at our second one. So our second question asks, does the type of material make a difference in speed? So let's create a new graph by clicking this graph button. I can also make it bigger so it's easier to see, and change the color so it's easier to differentiate, and just make the point sizes larger. So we're working with speed again, and top speed is the only speed variable, so I'm going to drag it to the x-axis again. And again, CODAP creates a dot plot relevant to top speed. And now it's looking for type of material. So I'm going to look at our variables, and there is a type variable. And what I love about CODAP is that if you hover over a variable name and you put in a description, it tells you that type is representative of the material of the track, so whether or not it's steel or wooden. So let's drag type down to our y-axis again. And again, since type is categorical, CODAP is going to create two separate dot plots. And from a first impression, these dot plots do look relatively similar. So if I was to click this and hide the selected case, it does look very similar to one another. Let me bring that. Oh goodness. Let me show all cases. And what I notice is that if I look at the mean, they're very, very similar. So the mean top speed of wooden roller coasters is about 55, while the mean top speed of steel coasters is about 61 rather. And if you have driven before, you would know that 6 miles per hour is not that big of a difference. So in context, the means don't really tell us much. But what does tell us a lot is that the steel group does have an outlier in this data set. So the top thrill dragster goes 120 miles per hour. And the absence of an outlier this fast in the wooden coaster tells us that there is a lot more variability in speeds for steel coasters. So yes, the type of material does make a difference in speed. Right? So question number 3. If you were going to ride a coaster that was built before 1980, what would you expect for a typical top speed? What about if you were riding a newer roller coaster? Well, for this question, we can actually look at our first graph because they're very similar. The only difference is that this time they're actually asking for the typical top speeds. So we know from looking at our descriptions before that a coaster is considered older if it was built before 1980, essentially, and a coaster is considered newest if it was built after 2000. So let's go ahead and just look at our older and newest dot plots. So the typical top speed of the older coasters can be our mean, which would be 49, and the typical top speed of our newest coasters would be 66. And look at that. We answered the third question. And now we're on to our last one. So question number 4 asks us to go to this website and enter all the information you can find about this roller coaster in a new row in the data table. Now, if you go to the website, it'll take you to this web page, and it's talking about this Xtreme coaster, and there's a bunch of pertinent information, like whether or not that it's built in steel, the length of the track is 1,391.1, speed is 37.3 miles per hour, etc. But to save on time, I actually went ahead and created another duplicate CODAP. Oh, wrong one. I went ahead and created another duplicate CODAP page, but this time I already inputted the data. So since it was built between 2007, it was added to our newest age group. And what these three graphs represent is that instead of having that one graph with all of the dot plots together, I created 3 separate ones to represent older, recent, and newer roller coasters, or newest roller coasters. Let's change those newest. And since the Xtreme coaster only really affects our newest data group, let's go ahead and look at it. So I was able to highlight this point because CODAP allows you to click entries and points and show you where it corresponds. Now, if we look at our newest data set, the mean is still 65.38. If we go back to our previous one, prior to the addition of the Xtreme coaster, the mean was 66. That 1 mile per hour difference isn't that much, so it doesn't really affect our analysis or the inferences we made for our previous questions. All right, so thank you again for listening to me and joining me in this investigation. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks.